Hello and welcome to the Titus Timeout podcast. I'm Jenny Abney-Civey, and today I'm going to talk about supply air, return air, ventilation air, and exhaust air. In last week's podcast on plenum return, and in many podcasts before, I've mentioned supply and return air as it enters and leaves a space. But I've never really explained what supply and return air is. Let me draw an office here, and let's put in a table, not quite to scale. I've drawn some variation of this before, where this is a supply diffuser and then this is a return, maybe egg crate. So we'll have supply air coming in to cool the space and the warm return air leaving the space. And let me label them. Okay, so where is the supply air coming from? I've talked about it coming from the air handler, and last week I talked about the return air going to the air handler, so let's draw an air handler. We've got a fan, put in a heating coil, and a cooling coil. So the supply air comes off the discharge of the air handler and is ducted to the supply diffusers. So there's basically two places that the air can come into the air handler, from outside the building or from inside the building. The air coming in from the outside is called outside air. It's also called ventilation air and sometimes called fresh air. You'll have some sort of damper that controls the airflow into it here. And let's label it. And now your outside air will come in from the outside, go into your air handler, through your coils and be heated up or cooled down, and then go into the space. Because outside air can be hot or cold or humid, depending on where you live, it can be more expensive to bring in 100% outside air because you'll have to use energy to heat it up or cool it down to get it to the 55 degrees and say 60% humidity that you want to supply your building. So because of that, you can use return air, which is also called recirculated air because it came from the occupied space as being recirculated through the building, and mix it with the outside air. So you would duct your return up through a damper again into your air handler. So now your return air will come up, go in, go through your coils just like your outside air, be mixed with it, and then supplied to the space. So I probably should have changed my outside air from green to blue as it cooled off the coil, but you get the point. So now that you're using return air, which is maybe 75 or 80 degrees instead of say 95, which is what it is outside in Dallas today, it'll cost less to cool our 75 degree return air down to 55 than it does to cool 95 degree air down to 55. So you can see why you'd want to use some return air in your systems. But now let's look at the other option for return air. Not all of it will go to the air handler because you are bringing in some air from outside. So let's open up our ductwork over here, and now this is exhaust air. So now you see our outside air, which is our ventilation air, our exhaust air, down here's our supply air, and our return air. And I probably shouldn't have extended our green outside air arrows down into the space because that's mixed air that's coming into the space. So those are the different air types moving through your HVAC system. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and thanks for taking a time out with us.